Hey, have you ever had moments where you've heard someone say, "Well, you probably need to have a good heart to heart conversation with that person?" Well, I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase and we're left wondering, like, what does that even mean? Or maybe you've heard that and you have an idea of what it means, but you're questioning, what does that really look like? Like, what does it look like if it's to be done effectively and in a good, productive way? And so that's what I want to talk with you about is how to have heart to heart conversations and what it means. Let's first talk about what does it mean whenever you are talking with someone. um, you are sharing something on your mind or on your heart. And so on your mind, it's like your thoughts, you're sharing ideas with one another or whatever it may be. But when you're sharing from the heart, you're getting vulnerable about like deep core beliefs or struggles and vulnerabilities, or you are being emotionally connected with another person. And so in order to have a heart to heart conversation, this is what really happens. And in fact, last time I went live, I was trying to figure out how to get my share screen to work, and I figured out. So I'm really excited to be able to show this to you. So what I'm going to share with you is this is actually just a handout part from a workbook from my Raising Sweet Peace parenting e-course. So if you're wondering where do I get that copy, it only comes with the online course. So this is what we're talking about when we're having heart-to-heart conversations. Let me see. Actually, let me go ahead and just show you this one. We'll just start with this. Okay, so when we're having heart-to-heart conversations, what we're doing right here, I hope you can see this cursor. But what we're doing is you're speaking, you're connecting with a person's heart emotionally. So in fact, let me go ahead and demonstrate that with you. So, when you're first talking with someone, you may have heard this phrase like that the person's being guarded. So maybe you're sensing the other person being guarded, or you yourself are being guarded, maybe even both. And so it's like this wall goes up when you're guarded. You're not sure about the situation or the conversation, or maybe you're not feeling like it's emotionally safe to be too revealing with that person. So that's healthy to some degree. Obviously, we definitely want to protect our heart. All of life's issues are going to flow through what's happening on the inside of us. And so we want to take care of it. But sometimes we can be overly guarded where it's not done in a healthy way. So what we want to do is, in order to have a heart-to-heart conversation, we would need to be able to have like maybe some windows, some doors, be able to know how to have be available and genuine and emotionally present when we're having conversations with people that we're trying to connect with. But of course, it's always good to set boundaries as needed. So when you're having a heart to heart with someone, what you're doing is you're connecting with them. And from there, you're growing and speaking life into one another. And so, like, let's talk about heart to heart conversations as a parent. What's really happening as a parent when you're having heart to heart conversations? So, once again, I'm going to share with you my screen, and we're going to take a look at what does this even look like. All right, so let me see if I can move that over to the side. All right, so here's what's happening. You're talking with your kid as a parent. So in a parent-child relationship, a heart-to-heart conversation looks like this. Maybe your child is struggling with something academically, or they're struggling with friends, or with getting along with a sibling, or maybe they're just, maybe they're just struggling with themselves. They are having a hard time feeling valuable and feeling unique and talented. And so when you talk with your child, you don't want to talk at them, because what's happening is you're conveying a message from the head, and you're not really connecting with their emotions. So if you're talking at your child, that's not going to be as effective, because if their guard is up, whatever you say, there's a really good chance that whatever seeds you're trying to plant, it's not going to actually take root, and you're kind of wasting your breath. And if you ever heard kids say, they complain about their parents and they say, "Oh my goodness, please stop lecturing me." Well, it's probably that you are not really connecting with them heart to heart. And so what we want to do is take that as feedback. Not, you don't have to get defensive about it, but it's good feedback as a parent's like, okay, I need to try a new strategy, maybe less words. Maybe I need to not have an agenda in this meeting where I have to like force feed all of this intellectual information that I have and I want to pass on to my kids. So what you want to do is you're going to slow things down and you're going to say, "Hey, how are things going?" So here's an example of how you would start that. So let's say your child is struggling with feeling encouraged, maybe like during all the things that are happening in the world right now, they're feeling really discouraged and worried about maybe you, if you leave the house, if you're going to get sick, maybe worried about what life is going to look like, with all these different rules and restrictions about how we can be around people. And so what you want to do, instead of like just preaching at them and saying, "Oh, it's going to be a fine," or, "Well, I don't know," that's not really going to be helpful. So you want to connect from the heart. So what you're doing right here is you're saying, "You know what? This is what I hear you saying is you're really concerned that when I leave the house and I have to go to work or wherever it may be, you're really worried that I'm going to be sick. Is that right?" And they're like, "Yes." And when you think about that, what is your fear there? That you're going to get sick and you're going to die. Maybe they have an extreme sense of fear. And so then you want to comfort your child. And so you want to help them. So if you notice this joy mountain, you're actually taking this and you're looking at, like, every time you have a heart-to-heart conversations, you're actually growing your child's capacity emotionally. I'm all about that. We definitely want to grow children emotionally. We want them to be resilient. We want them to have EQ, which is emotional quotient. It's emotional intelligence, to be able to recognize what are the feelings that are happening inside of me right now and in other people, and how do I navigate that? Because relationships can be messy and life can be really messy with emotions, but we do need to take care of our mental and emotional health. And so when we're having our heart-to-heart conversations with our kids, we're connecting on an emotional level with them. We don't have to share our own baggage with our kids. That's not necessarily what I'm saying here, but we're just saying, I am emotionally present and I'm able to have a greater capacity than your problem. In other words, my capacity to handle whatever you're going through right now, kiddo, is bigger. So your problem can park its space right here. But sometimes when our kids open up about things that they're struggling with, we might get upset or we try to rationalize it away. And what we're really communicating without words is we're saying, your problem is bigger than my capacity to handle it. So it's not really safe for you to share that with me. You're going to have to, like, stuff it or find somebody else to talk to. And that is a sickening thought as a parent. Like, that's our fear, right? We want to be able to be that person that they go to and that they feel comfortable talking with. But it's not always the case. And that's okay. Not every conversation has to be had immediately. Our kids have their own thoughts and feelings and mindsets that we can't just control and manipulate. We want to, like, give our kids permission to have their own processes, but ultimately we at least want to take responsibility for our role, our place in that relationship. So if I am, like, not handling that relationship very well, I definitely want to repair it and say, you know what, I don't think I handled that very well. And so you own it and you move on, and then you have these heart-to-heart conversations. So let's go back to the example we're coming up with. So I would say something like, okay, like, I get that. Like, that's a big concern. I know that that some people have actually had that sickness and have had issues with their health, and it's gotten pretty bad. But I want to let you know, here's what I'm doing to be safe, and here's why I'll be okay, and here's what we do about it, even if something by some chance would happen. And so what you're doing right here is, if you see these three words, it might be really small, too small perhaps on your screen. Let me see if I can make that a little bit bigger for you guys. So what you're doing in that heart-to-heart, oh, let me just zoom it up. Here we go. I'll figure it out, you guys. Let's see if that would be too big. Maybe that's bigger. You guys let me know, like, post in the comments. Yes, that's better. Thank you. Actually, I can't even see the comments with this thing in the way. All right, well, I'll check your comments in a minute. Okay, so what you're doing right here is these words right here. Again, this is in my Raising Sweet Peace parenting e-course. But what you're doing right here is you are comforting your child. And we don't comfort always just with logic. They need to have a felt sense of safety. They need to experience it. Like when your kids used to be afraid of monsters in their closet or something like that. Maybe they still are. You don't just say, like, oh, you're fine, monsters aren't real. Maybe you do say that, but that's not the only thing you say if you see that they're still struggling with that fear. You want to actually help them to experience that safety. You might walk around the room and say, here's why. Not your monster's not real, but here's another reason why you're going to be just fine, because of this and because of that and whatever it may be. And so you're comforting them, you're protecting them. Sometimes we have to step in and take over. Like if you hear two of your kids fighting in the other room, you don't want to always solve it. But what you do want to do is overhear and pay attention to how they're solving it. And if you leave it to where they're taking care of it themselves, then really the person who wins is going to be the bigger, stronger one or the more manipulative one. And so that's not always what we want to have happen. And so what we want to do is like kind of hear, like eavesdrop, like you hear kids arguing in the other room and to see how they resolve it. And you may have to step in. So that's just one example. Maybe you have to step in when it comes to like certain kinds of situations, if they're involved in any organizations and something's not going well. But ultimately, you want to actually give them resources. Here's what I want you to do with that is I want you to, next time your sibling says this to you, try this to solve your problem instead. So there used to be moments where one of my kiddos would come to me and complain about the other one doing something mean or rude, or maybe they didn't do anything wrong. They just got offended easily. And so I wouldn't be quick to jump in and solve it for them. In fact, I would just try to think through, okay, what are they really needing right now? well, I'm sorry that really hurt your feelings, baby, but here's what you probably could do about it, or here's why she responded that way. Maybe you shouldn't have done this. What do you think? Go back and try to say this next time and let me know how that works. So what you're actually doing is you're reorganizing their mindset. So if they're being offended easily, you're going to help them reframe it as like, well, it could be that this happened. So you're helping them not vilify someone or a situation. You're helping them not be a victim. You're helping empower them, and you're giving them even words sometimes. Here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to say. And when we're doing that, we're actually sending them out and giving them support, sending them back out into the world. It's like, okay, you're struggling with this, but here's what I want you to go and do about it. So when you're having a heart-to-heart conversation, you have to slow down. And again, you want to make sure that you are giving capacity. Let me see if I can minimize that so I can see you guys again. You want to make sure that you have a greater capacity than your child's problem, so that they feel comfortable actually coming to you for the different things that they're going through in life. And then you kind of check in on them every now and then. Maybe you say things like, hey, how's your bucket? There's a book about the love bucket and how things are going. I actually don't necessarily recommend that book. I think it's a cute book, but the reality is part of that book teaches this mindset I don't want my children to have. And so you can read it, but then emphasize what you believe to be true, but that people don't have to drain your bucket. Sometimes people do things and it feels like they're tipping over your bucket, but the reality is, if you know who you are and you have the right perspective of situations, then kiddo, you don't have to let anyone to tip your bucket. That's only you have control over that. And people can do things that might hurt you, and so maybe that feels like your bucket's getting tipped and the water's coming out of it, and so your bucket feels low. But I do like the idea of like, you have a heart and it has emotions in it. And sometimes the joy is really small. And so we want to be able to take responsibility for taking care of that bucket. And also in that book, I think it also talked about other people helping you fill that bucket, which is true to some degree. We definitely need our kids to go to people to help them until they learn themselves also how to manage their emotions. But we kind of need a little bit of both, right? And so we want to fill in the gaps so our kids have a really solid framework for thinking about life, about themselves, about others, and about just different kinds of situations. And so if we want to grow our kids emotionally, we really have to learn how to have these heart-to-heart conversations. Now, if you remember on that chart I just showed you, that's like Joy Mountain. I had that image created for my parenting course because there's really nothing that I could find out there that really conveyed this concept as well as what I read about many years ago about just how we were able to have this mountain of joy, this capacity. And it was really based on some of the stuff that was taught in this prayer ministry model that I learned about. And so we created together, me and my graphic designer, we created together this image that was kind of in my head, like, this is the best way I can kind of describe it. It's like, we're kind of here at Joy Camp, like at the base of the mountain, but we're also trying to increase our child's capacity for joy. And so it's kind of like climbing a mountain. And so what we're doing there is we're sending kids out, and sometimes life happens where it gets difficult, and they have to come back to you to have a heart-to-heart conversation. They need extra help with whatever situation is going on. And so when they come back to you, that's where you help them reorganize what's happening in their mind and their hearts. And then you're equipping them, you're comforting them. You have to protect them and step in and fix a problem that maybe it's too big for them to fix, that you as a parent have to step in, because we are guardians. We're teaching them to guard their heart. But at the same time, we're not doing everything for them always. Like sometimes we actually are raising them, not sometimes, but we are. Our goal is to raise them to learn how to guard their own heart for themselves. And so, but as they're young, we sometimes have to step in and actually do something there. And so we're trying to equip our kids. And when they leave that place of joy, when they're having some struggles, we need to teach our kids how to return to a place of joy. So what's the turnaround time for your kids when they're struggling? Maybe they have a 2-hour tantrum and fits, and they're having a really hard time gathering themselves, or maybe it's only 45 minutes. Whatever it may be, it's okay for now. It's just a litmus test of how they're doing. So we want to learn how do I help my kids return to a place of joy? So it's not always so much the length of time as it is what are they doing during that time, and to be able to help them gather themselves so that they can return to a place of joy. So I want to share with you one more screen. Let me see if I can find it real quick. This is just so helpful in learning about, where is it? There it is. Oh, boom, there it is. Awesome. Okay. So this is a really helpful handout that I have found on a website that really teaches on what we call attachment theory. It's about parenting and how kids learn to have just a really good place solid baseline for joy and capacity for handling difficult situations. So let me share with you the screen. It is going to be super helpful. All right. Hey, Rico, good to see you. I'm glad you're enjoying this information. It certainly has helped me with understanding parenting perspectives and stuff like that. So this is awesome. All right, so let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger without completely consuming my face. Here we go. All right, so this is called circle of security. So let me zoom. I'm gonna share with you just like overall, like what does this circle look like? What are we talking about here? So, and I'm gonna add to this conversation that you're not gonna find on this website, just based on the Bible, based on scripture. But you see these hands right here. This is like the parent or the guardian. And so they don't talk about this, but this, I think about the potter's clay. We have children and they're moldable and they're given to us as a gift. Children are a gift from the Lord, and we have the responsibility to steward them really well. And so this is what we're doing. When you think about that joy mountain, when they come back to you, when you're having a heart-to-heart conversation, you actually have a beautiful opportunity to mold and shape their minds and their hearts. It's about mind renewal. And so, and since they come to us fresh, unless you've adopted a kid or some other kind of situation there, like it's a lot easier. And so, but at the same time, kids pick up beliefs from life experiences, no big deal. But we want to be able to steward those heart-to-heart conversations really well. And the more reps you put in, the better it gets. Kind of like working out at a gym or working out at your home gym right now. But it's like the more reps I put in, the stronger I get physically. The more reps you put in having these good conversations, these heart-to-heart conversations, you're actually going to be able to help your child become stronger emotionally and mentally. If you think about it, every time I'm praying with the Lord, like He's molding my heart, and when I'm with Him, I think more like Him when I'm around Him, and so if there's not a lot of time together, then He's not going to be able to mold me as well. So I need to make sure that I'm spending time being with Him, talking with Him, hanging out with Him, being aware of His presence. And that's going to help mold me and renew my mind and refresh me. And same is true with your kids. Like you want to be able to work on your own capacity. And so I know I'm talking about parenting right now. This heart-to-heart conversations are true for any relationship you have. Friendships, whenever friendships you have like a really awkward, unhealthy moment and you're like, that kind of hurt my feelings. You want to go to that person and have a heart-to-heart so you don't come across accusatory, with guns blazing. First of all, if it sounds accusatory, there's a good sign that of like you could probably identify who you're listening to, right? We think about the accuser of the brethren. So we want to make sure that our the way we bring up issues is gentle and we assume the best, especially in friends and family. And even if like their intentions weren't okay, like you could put a good perspective on that. Say like people have their own issues, and you don't have to take that personally, but you probably need to set some boundaries and figure out how if y'all are able to work that through. So going back to parenting, because this is so helpful. I really, really enjoyed talking about all family relationships, all adult relationships. But parenting is just such a good one because there's just not enough wonderful resources from a kingdom-minded therapist that's out there. And so my hope is that you guys will grab a hold of this and can apply it so quickly, immediately in your family today, even that you're going to start seeing fruit from this, just from watching this. I really do believe that just as you're hearing this, we have these, I'm going off on a tangent right now. We have brain cells, they're called neurons, and they're actually thoughts, and they fire off. So even as you are hearing me or I'm hearing someone else talk with me, our neurons are firing off and we're creating new neural pathways in our brain already. So the more time you spend with God, we have the mind of Christ. It says it in scripture, but the more we spend time with Him, His thoughts become our thoughts. Guess what? When we spend time having heart-to-heart conversations with our children, that their thoughts are becoming our thoughts. So instead of feeling put off or burdened that your kid's having a struggle, see it as a beautiful opportunity. I get to remold your mindset right now because right now you're taking this too hard, or right now you don't have the right perspective of the situation. I don't have to be displaced and like, oh, you're thinking about it wrong. But instead just like have a connection. Like, I get that. Like, hey man, sometimes I struggle with thinking about things the wrong way too, but here's what I think is what's really happening. What do you think? And you just stay connected from the heart, being vulnerable, being humble, and taking it easy with your kid. But seriously, this is so amazing. So check this out. We're going to start right here on the base on the left side. I don't know if you guys can see my cursor or not. Let's see. I'm new to using this. Can you? Oh, you can see my cursor. Okay, good. All right. So you're going to start right here on as you are the secure base as the parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle, whoever you are raising children. You are the secure base, the safe haven. Kids have to have a safe place. In fact, really, when it comes to studies, they're showing that parents, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be good enough, and that's really amazing news because thank goodness. I actually wrote a book called God Help Me, Christ-Centered Solutions for Frustrated Parents, because like there are moments where I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. Lord help me. I don't know what to do with this situation when this kid's doing this. So you have to work on your own self-care, certainly. But just know, like, I'm going to tell you these things and you're not going to crush it, be perfect at all these things. I am not either. But we have to know proper alignment. Just like we know proper alignment, what does life look like when my spirit is leading, then it's my soul following suit and my body is just going where that goes, When we have proper alignment, spirit, soul, and body, when we have that proper alignment, then we're going to do well in life. But sometimes it gets out of whack and misaligned, and it's not like, oh, it's so awful. It's like, okay, that's all right. I'm just now that I know, or because I know what proper alignment looks like, I know how to get myself back into alignment, get into realignment, just spending more time with the Lord, just abiding in his presence. And so this is what it looks like with parenting. This is your alignment process. And if you get out of alignment, no big deal. Just pick it right back up, move on. So here you're going to look at this. You're going to go up and over to the right, and then down and back right here. So envision this picture. If you can envision this oval kind of being transferred on top of my Joy Mountain image that I showed you a moment ago. This is exactly what it is. You're putting in your reps. You're kind of going up. Sometimes it feels like crazy land, by the way, but it's the reps. So sometimes I say this to some of the parents I work with. If you feel like you've said something 1,000 times to your kids, it's probably because it's how the brain works. It's through repetition that your kids learn that you're actually literally recreating mindsets and neural pathways in their brain. It's amazing. And so we just have to keep that in mind, that they're children. We have to do things repetitively. It's not that they don't know it. They're just, it's not, quick with them right now, and their brain's still developing and all of that good stuff. So our role is to send our kids out and support them. I don't know if you remember seeing that little arrow that kind of like shot them out on the mountain, send and support. So we are to support our kids' exploration. That's why when we first have children, we baby-proof everything. We don't want to say, no, don't touch that, don't touch this. We want to baby-proof things so that they can have the freedom to explore. Now, there's two ends of this continuum we want to talk about. What we don't want is where we don't allow our kids to do anything because we're over sheltering them to some degree, so this could look, I don't want anyone to translate this in a different way that I'm not trying to say. So for example, we don't want kids to no, I don't want you to ever go outside, it's okay to go in your backyard. It's okay to go in your front yard. Just, it's okay to go to certain places, so support the exploration, allow them to have new experiences in life. But at the same time, make sure it's supervised with adults that are trustworthy, and if you're not sure, if you don't trust them, then don't send your kids, and don't feel like, well, everybody else is doing this, so maybe I'm being too paranoid. Well, no, your kids are yours, okay? So use wisdom. And if you're not sure what you should do in specific scenarios, we can have a consultation. But so you want to send them out, allow them to have exploration, but at the same time, you want to have a supervision. Kids do need supervision. I know growing up sometimes, it'd be like, hey, I just need to know where y'all are going. But you got to get back by the time the streetlights are on. And so that was something that people did very often, and that might be okay with some people. But I know for my household, I'm not down for that because I'll just tell you this: it's over 90% of child abuse happens with somebody it's an acquaintance. And so I do not want my kids just to be anywhere and then I just need to know their name. I don't want that. And so nor do I want to say like, well, I met them technically, so now I know them. No, I need to know them, right? And so send your kids out, allow them explore with supervision. I know I said a lot there, but during that time, you want to watch over them. You want to delight in them, think about when your kids were playing basketball and they're trying to ride a bike for the first time. You want to be there and be a part of those experiences. You can't make every single experience, but when you're there, be present, turn off the phone, and just be available to them. Have some good face-to-face quality time. In fact, a lot of youth in our generation are having a hard time with mental, emotional health because they're not having the same quality time that they need to have to develop quality time. To develop coping skills. Literally, let me tell you this. The only way that children grow in their coping skills is the relationship they have with their caregiver. So when they're able to have face-to-face, heart-to-heart, healthy conversations and enjoyable moments, that's actually going to be the only way that children grow in their coping skills is through relationships. Only way. It's not just lessons in their head. They have to have those experiences put away because they're actually growing their brain when they have that. So enjoy life with them, help if they need it, you know what? So you just enjoy it. And then now sometimes kids come back to you. So they come back to you because they're struggling. They're like, Mom, so-and-so took my toy without asking, or they're in my room. I don't want them in my room. Or Mom, I fell down. I was trying to like climb the tree in the backyard and I fell down. Or whatever it may be. Okay. So they come back to you. And so when they come back to you, your job is protect them. So if you need to step in, okay. But try not to always be quick to step in. Like, see if you can equip them first, comfort them, delight in them. You know, this is really important. Right here is to delight in them here, just as you're delighting them at the top of the oval. And so in this cycle, it's really important that we don't get put off. Sometimes we don't like I know one of my buttons is like, I don't like it when my kids whine. I'm like, ugh. But I need to have enough composure and self-care that I just don't get so put off all the time by it, where I just can't delight in them when they're struggling. So again, we want our capacity bigger than our child's problems. And sometimes our child's problems will trigger us. And that's when we need to do a heart check with us individually, like in our own time with the Lord, be like, what's happening in my heart? Why was I such a jerk face? You know, like what's going on? Why am I so irritable? So make sure you're delighting your kids, you know, be welcoming of that experience. But then correct them if they're doing something wrong or if they're vilifying everyone and you just, maybe your button is, I can't stand when people have a victim mindset and my own child is having it. Well, you're going to feel that trigger, have composure. You know, I just like to say shelf it, don't stuff it. So put your stuff on a shelf, deal with it later so that you can be present and available to help your child. Because right now, they need you right now. They don't need your mess coming into your heart-to-heart conversations with them. And then come back over here and then work on, like, why did I get triggered by that? I felt it on the inside. What's going on in my heart? So, so that way you can get some new effective strategies on dealing with those situations and then organize their feelings. What that means is, let's say they're like, here's an example. So one time my child, one of my kiddos, when she was really young, she was at preschool and she had an argument with a friend. A friend didn't want to play with what she wanted to play with. They couldn't agree. And so the girl was like, fine then, I don't want to be your friend. So I picked her up from daycare and she was like, I'm so sad, Mom, this person said this. And I was like, I'm so sorry. So here's how I'm trying to handle that. You know, I'm creating space emotionally. I'm creating this room, a holding space for my kid just to have an incubator to work on her heart. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sure that did hurt, you know. And I asked her, what'd you do about it? Did you stick up for yourself? You know, because I like to ask my kids that. Did you stick up for yourself? Did you stick up for yourself the right way? Because we want to teach our kids to be assertive and to speak up for their situations, especially when we're not around. And so we're going to say things. So I talked with her about it and I said, well, it sounds like, so here goes the mindset conversation, because she's feeling like she's not good enough. And she got rejection. And so I don't want my child to have a spirit of rejection. And so what I'm telling her now is I'm like, okay, well, you know what? It sounds like she's your friend, right? You said she's your friend normally, and y'all normally play together. She's like, yeah. I was like, okay, well, it sounds like your friend. When y'all couldn't agree on something, she really wanted to have it her own way. And so she just doesn't know how to take care of feelings. So she got her mads out the wrong way. And so she said something really mean to you. And so does that sound about right? Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, you know what? We don't play with people while they're being mean with us, but you know what you could do is next time you can compromise. We gave examples of what she could say to try to compromise, like, hey, maybe you play this and then we play this next. Negotiate on something new. But then we also said, well, here's what you can say if she continues. Just next time, you know, that happens, if you can't agree, say, okay, well, let me know if you change your mind, and you move on, you play with someone else. So you're teaching your kids then to stick up for themselves while being respectful to someone else. And they're setting really healthy boundaries, because some of these kids are actually, I've had so many conversations with children who say, they're afraid to stick up for themselves because they think they're going to get in trouble, because they think the other person's going to tell a teacher or someone else and say, you're rude, you know, you hurt my feelings because you like stood up for yourself. Well, no, you want to make sure you explain that to your kids, because kids have this in their head, but you don't know it because they don't really tell you. And so, but I hear it from kids, and kids are like, I'm afraid I'm going to get in trouble because they're going to say I was being mean, or that I made them mad because I didn't do what they wanted. And so that's when you just explain to your kids, you know, they might tell, but then you're just going to tell the teacher your situation. You know, you're not in trouble, and I'll always have your back, and I'll explain it to them. But take the time to explain it to your teacher so they have the full story and they don't just assume with what what someone brought up. And so you just coach your kids, right? So you're right here, you're organizing their feelings, you're giving them a new way. And I don't think it's written right here, so you can probably even add that down here, is give them a new way to approach their situation. And that's when you send them back out again. So here I am talking to her, reorganizing her feelings. I don't want to have rejection. I don't want to have, any boundary issues, like she's just going to cave into something like that. And so when she went back to preschool, she had that really powerful conversation because the girl did it again. And I checked in with her and I was like, hey, how'd it go? What'd you do this time? What'd you say? All right, high five, great job sticking up for yourself in the right way. I'm so proud of you. And then another time they ended up working it out and they were able to play. And I'm like, wonderful, great job, like figuring out problems with friends, And so you're sending them back with new options and you're helping them to approach the problems that they have in life. It's real life issues, but it's really so helpful just to be able to allow your kids to explore like new solutions for their real world problems. And taking the time to do that sometimes feels exhausting, especially if you have a lot of stuff on your plate mentally, or even just like you just got a lot going on. But that's when I think of that phrase, you have a lot on your plate, I think, well, we need to portion control on life. Like that's really easier said than done. But take a look at your life. If you find that you're not enough, you're not available emotionally enough for your kids to have those conversations, then we definitely want to take something off, because it's really important. So I hope that's really helpful. This is what you're doing when you're having heart-to-heart conversations, is you're creating space. So just to recap, you're creating space to emotionally be present and available, to have good conversations, to connect with your kids, give them just some really heartfelt, important words and seeds, but you don't want to be talking at them. You want to make sure they're a part of that process and you're building relationally. And here's the last thing I'm going to leave you with, is knowing when you should give wisdom. So we definitely want to give wisdom to our children, but sometimes, especially older kids, you have to make sure they're hungry enough to hear it. So we talked at the beginning of this video about how people can be guarded. So if you sense that your child or your friend or your spouse or whoever it is, that they tend to be kind of guarded, then what you want to do is you don't want to just give a bunch of wisdom. Because it's like the parable of four soils. You have this heart that's hardened, it's callous, it's like a hiking trail. Someone's been walking along that dirt for so long, it's gotten kind of tough. And so no seeds that are planted are really going to get into the ground long enough, because pretty soon the enemy's just going to take that away. Like whatever seeds you sowed, is gone, like it was never even spoken. And so you want to increase the likelihood that it takes root. And so you want to know the pace, like where's the person's heart? So if you feel like the person's heart is up and it's guarded, then you need to build more relationally. So I think of person A, person B. And what holds them together is this thing called relationship, and it's like a net. I know these are really strange illustrations perhaps, but this is how my brain works. So I hope it helps for you. But it's like a net, and truth is weighty. It is so weighty. So when you speak truth to a situation with a person, you have to make sure that that relationship's strong enough to contain that truth. But sometimes we do too much truth telling, speaking and pruning, that the relationship can't contain it. And that's why we see our relationships deteriorating. And so we don't want that. We don't want that with our kids. And so there's this wonderful saying I actually learned from a friend of mine. She said, rules without relationship equals rebellion. I'm like, oh, that's a good word. You hear that? And she's like, I don't know. She listens to so many different things and she has so much wisdom. I'm like, I love that. And I love how easily it's just captured. Rules without relationship equals rebellion. So what that means is if I'm constantly putting rules upon somebody, like parenting or whatever it may be, work, whatever, I'm putting so many rules upon somebody, but I'm not building relationally, then it's going to lead to rebellion. So that's kind of like what we're talking about, like the relationship net here. And so if you want to have a heart-to-heart conversation, it's not just about speaking a bunch of truth. It can be that, and it probably needs to be some of that, but it's also primarily, it's focusing on the relationship. How are we? It's taking a look at the net. Is there any holes in the net? Do we need to re-sew some of those and make it stronger? Or what do we need to do about that? Do we need to do a hard reset and just get a whole new net? Like, what are we doing here? And so I hope this is really helpful. I hope that that your takeaway is recognizing, oh, that's what heart-to-heart conversations mean. And oh, that's what it looks like if we really want to be effective, is we want to make sure, and you can kind of sense it, like in certain relationships, you can kind of sense if a person's guarded or not. Maybe it's nonverbal cues or how little they're sharing with you. And so, or how little they're present with you emotionally. So you can kind of sense that. Most of us can kind of tell if someone's guarded or not. So make sure you're testing that out, and you kind of play through relational protocol, as I would say it. Like there's a protocol in relationships that you don't want to violate. You just don't want to come in and talk to someone you don't even know and start telling them what to do. Like build relationally. Take the time to cultivate into people, into their hearts, because that's what really matters. If you want those seeds to take root, make sure that you have a conversation and a heart to heart where both hearts are connected and synchronized, and then it's growing together. Because when someone builds relationally with someone else, they now have permission to speak into their life. But you don't have permission to speak into someone's life if you are just speaking into it, but you didn't do the work of building relationally. Think about it. Who do you know has ever come across your path in life? They told you what to do, or they gave you feedback or critique, and you're like, I don't even know you. You didn't even know me like that. You maybe even had that thought. Hey, Ashley, I'm so glad it's so helpful. You maybe even had that thought where it's like, oh man, that's so weird. Because they broke relational protocol. It's actually a thing, you guys. And so we want to make sure that we're like, okay, so I need to do a relational protocol here. So I need to apply wisdom as much as I really want to speak this truth. Like it's too weighty right now, and I need to be honoring of people. And that's how we cultivate healthy hearts together in community. So I hope this blesses you guys. Certainly post some comments or questions. I'd love to hear more about your feedback on what this meant to you. And even when you apply it, this week in different relationship settings, like I'd love to hear feedback from you. So have a good day, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.